This is one of the biggest issues in youth sports.
A good parent gave their child whatever they needed. Today, I think a good parent feels like I got to give them whatever they want.
Parents lying to their kids about their potential.
You want relationship when they're 22, not therapy.
How would you describe what a leader is?
It's swaying somebody, but not manipulation, it's motivation.
The danger of parents being afraid to let their kids fail.
We're often living out our unlived life through our child. Come on.
Teams desperately need this positive leadership, and so many kids are afraid to do that.
Part of the reason they don't step out or whatever, they're going, I don't want the ramifications of what if I make a mistake?
I think that's the hardest thing, is trying to figure out, like, man, am I being too tough on my kid? But also we know that sometimes they need a kick in the rear.
I actually believe great coaches and great parents, it's a tender balance between intentionality and laissez-faire.
Hello, everyone. Brad with Pure Athlete. I am so excited to announce our newest sponsor, Guardian Sports, and here to talk about their amazing product, Guardian Caps. COO of Guardian Sports, Jake Hansen.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Yeah, we're really excited to partner with Pure Athlete here, just aligning the missions of prioritizing youth sports safety with our Guardian Cap product. The Guardian Cap is a lightweight, less than 7-ounce product that's one size fits all, that fits over any existing football helmet. The Guardian Cap is currently used by the NFL, CFL, 90+% of FBS NCAA teams, and over 350,000 athletes around the world. We're excited to partner with Pure Athlete just to help grow the game of football and help allow these athletes to play the game they love without the repercussions. If you want to learn more about Guardian Caps, go to guardiansports.com and reach out to us from there.
Welcome back to Pure Athlete. I'm Jeff, along with Britt and Brad. And guys, did y'all have a good Thanksgiving?
Man, it was fantastic. Ate too much, as we all do.
It was a great Thanksgiving. All the kids were home, had a wonderful, wonderful week, except for Friday night.
Yeah, I know. I want to.
And
I'm sorry to you guys.
Yeah, those of
Georgia
us who are
Tech
Tech
put up
fans.
everything they had.
It's a great football game, though.
Well, it was. And, you know, for me, one of my good buddies is Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator for Tech, and I thought he had a great game plan. Jesse Palmer, I might have said his name 100 times.
Yeah,
So he definitely gave him a lot of
got some pub, yeah. Yeah, my son, I think he summed it up pretty well. He said, Dad, we just watched one of the greatest college football games of all time, and unfortunately we lost it. And so it's never going to be a great memory for Tech fans, but what an unbelievable game.
So if we had won, should we have planted our flag on the Georgia emblem? That was the thing that happened all weekend.
So this is crazy. It's like all of a sudden all these kids started putting it out like, if you win, you got to plant the flag. And like I said, I don't like that. I don't think. My kids actually were even asking me about it because they saw, of course, all the brawls happening. And I was just like, maybe if I don't know. It's just, Michigan, Ohio State, dude, they truly hate each other.
Yeah,
like I don't know if it's acceptable there, but it's like that just goes on. But like, I thought Steve Sarkisian did an awesome job for Texas. He told his team back after the thing. And I think Georgia Tech's a great example of Brent Key and Kirby Smart hugging after that game for 45 seconds. I thought was one of the coolest things I've seen in a game that was the emotion and everything. I thought that was really cool.
Really was. And in fairness, Kirby, his interview after the game gave lots of props to Tech before he even talked about his team. So I thought that was a really good example of sportsmanship when we saw a lot of poor examples.
Yeah, and leaders, you talk about the coaches being leaders of the program, and I thought that was great. And I think that leads us into today's guest.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about leaders, it's going to be a great one. We have Dr. Tim Elmore on with us today, and he's a founder of Growing Leaders Organization. He's been at it for 40-plus years. Not trying to age you, I'm sorry. Just giving the facts, but and talks about too just the parenting principles. And so we're honored to have you on. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Elmore.
It's my pleasure. It's going to be a fun conversation.
And we are excited to talk to you. I'll date myself a little bit as well, but I first heard you at North Point Church back, maybe 30 years ago, and you used to speak there quite a bit. And I've heard you at my kid's school, which was Perimeter School. You've talked to parents there, and every time I've heard you, Tim, it's challenged me like crazy in terms of how I parent my kids. And you have a lot of expertise and a lot of research. And so we just think you're a perfect guest to come on today and talk to our audience, which is predominantly parents and coaches, about a lot of different things. So,
well, let's let him talk about himself a little bit, because I think his credibility is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you work with tons of Fortune 500 companies, but for our audience, talk about some of the sports teams that you've consulted with and helped and taught many lessons to.
Sure. Well, that's been the most fun part of my job, actually. So Growing Leaders has always been about students and young people. But the very first NCAA team that we worked with was way back in 2007, when the Texas Longhorn football team, and Mac Brown was the head coach back then, was just really struggling with character issues and behavior stuff. And so we started sending these habitudes for athletes on a DVD, one DVD at a time. Just send it out, and they'd show up that week. Then there'll be another one. But then the Kansas City Royals, we work with the Royals and the Braves. Jeff, that may mean something to you.
Yeah, I was with Kansas City when you were doing the stuff with Dayton Moore. Dayton was
that's
a big
right.
fan of yours. Yep.
Yeah, well, we got to shake hands and talk for a minute. You were just a ton of fun. But anyway, so NFL, NBA, MLB teams, and then a lot of college and high school teams as well. And it's usually because a coach cares about leadership and about the heart of the player, not just the, I always like to say building the backbone, not just the bicep. So that's who we tend to partner with. And we've just had a blast meeting some of the best coaches in the world who really want to build good men and women. Yeah.
So, Tim, you mentioned a word there that is something you've coined, and that's habitudes. And a lot of what you talk about is built around that idea. Can you kind of share with our audience what are habitudes? What does that come from? What does it mean?
Yeah, well, I worked for John Maxwell for 20 years, right out of college. And John was teaching these timeless leadership laws, to corporate America. But I kept thinking, we got to get this to the next generation. And I don't think they're looking for a law, you know what I'm saying? Okay, give me a law, So I thought, what if we could teach with images? They're on their screen. I call them screenagers. They're on their screens with TikTok and Snapchat and Instagram. So habitudes are images that form leadership habits and attitudes. So it's a way of teaching a timeless principle with a picture. And because pictures are worth 1,000 words, we get student engagement or athlete engagement in the clubhouse or the locker room. And now it's not just a lecture, it's a picture that I believe the student athletes take with them out on the ball field. And so you don't need to have a lecture on focus in left field. You just say, rivers or floods, you flood your river, buddy. Oh, river, let's do it. So anyway, it's just been really, really fun to, in fact, I was just texting with Sean McDermott of the Buffalo Bills. They're using habitudes there, and they had an incredible game last night in the snow up in Buffalo.
You're right.
Yeah, but it was so much fun. And Sean cares about the character of his young men. So he's the hero, but I get to throw him water as he runs his race. It's fun.
Yeah, I laughed. Speaking of Sean McDermott, I don't know if you saw, he was doing snow angels with Josh Allen after the game on the field. And he's a guy, right, you pull for, man. Those guys that him, Dan Campbell's, like what you talk about, the coaches that actually care about the players too. And that's not celebrated enough. That's not talked about enough, I think, in today's life.
Well, if I can volley back, Jeff, one of the things I absolutely admire about Sean, and he's not perfect, of course, but I just want to give him a shout out. When I first really connected with him and he said, let's get on Zoom, he said, Tim, I want to be a better leader for my team, and I want to be a better dad for my kids. And I said, I want to help. So isn't that cool, though, that he's not just obsessed with the team he's leading? He's got two young leaders, at home growing up. So
that's awesome. That's why when you talk about working with Kansas City, and I know you Dayton Moore is just one of the best when it comes to it, man. Like I always said, Dayton, you were so good that when you actually released people or traded them, they always stood up, shook your hand, gave you a hug. And I'm like, that is impressive.
It is. It's so true. I know. Yeah. I was just with him, and he's completely now consumed about pouring back. He's always been pouring into young, the next generation.
Oh, yeah.
Just so absorbed with that now. And I just love how he's spending the last 10 or 15 years of his career making sure the next gen is ready to step up.
Tim, you're a foremost expert on leadership, but for dummies like myself, how would you describe or define what a leader is?
Wow, that's a great question. I believe, it's funny. I just had a breakfast this morning where we were talking about what is leadership, what is influence. J. Oswald Sanders first said leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I believe it's the ability to have an impact on another person in their behaviors, their attitudes, and just their mindset. So it's swaying somebody, but not manipulation. It's motivation. It's moving together for mutual advantage. And that doesn't require a badge or a title or a position. Jeff, I'm sure you've seen on ball clubs, there was a team captain, but there might have been a whole nother person that was influencing that ball club, bad or good,
Yeah, I go back to a buddy of mine with the Cubs, David Ross in 2016.
Yes.
He was kind of the backup catcher. He'd catch some games. And you had Anthony Rizzo, Jason Hayward, Chris Bryant, but he was the guy that everybody looked to. And I agree, you don't have to be the best player to be the leader on the team, 100%.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Tim, you've one of the things you've done is you've written and this number may be wrong, but 39 books. I think you're working on another one now. I heard from your assistant. One of those books is called Generation Z Unfiltered, and you share 9 unique challenges that Gen Z face and how to overcome them. Can you share a couple of examples of those with our audience?
And what age group is Gen Z, man? I get confused with all this stuff.
Yeah. That's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's actually 2, sociologically speaking, there's 2 next gens growing up together right now. Generation Z would essentially be middle school, high school, college, and maybe the first couple of years of young professional in their career. Gen Alpha would be younger children. They would be maybe up to 10 or 12 years old, birth up to 10 or 12 years old. And so the Alpha generation has only known the 21st century. So here's the way I like to put it. Millennials grew up with a cell phone. Gen Z grew up with a smartphone. Gen Alpha is growing up with AI. When Generation Alpha is adults, they'll be interacting with robots as much as human beings, like it or not. So we're going to have to build their interpersonal skills, their people skills, because robots can be programmed, but they're not humans. And
I'm going to be honest with you. I hope I'm not here for that. I'd rather be up looking down.
You're going to
be. Lord, take me.
100%.
Yeah, that's wild. So anyway, I just love these kids, but I'm so aware that the gap keeps getting bigger between me and who they are. I remember Coach Nick Saban said one time, they keep being 18 to 22 and I keep getting older and older.
Yeah.
So I'm working hard, as you all are, to really understand the world they're growing up in so we can better lead them. So that's my goal.
Tim, this is an overgeneralization, but I've been a high school athletic director for almost 10 years, and it seems to be that generation struggles with, we talked about being leaders, they struggle with putting themselves out there as leaders. What advice can you give to those kids and their parents that they're really struggling to do that, and their teams desperately need this positive leadership, and so many kids are afraid to do that? What advice can you give to them?
Okay, good question, and probably deserves way more than what I got in my brain. But let me first start, for our listeners' sake, with helping them understand why these kids might be in this posture. I think we can just say, you need some grit, buddy. So first of all, think about the world kids are growing up in. They know if they do step out or stand out, somebody might videotape it, post it, and now they're the idiot for the rest of their life on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? So think about this. If you and I would have dropped our tray in the lunchroom at school, the 2 tables around us would have looked over, clapped for us, making fun of us, and then it would have been over. Today, somebody captures it on their iPhone, posts it, and now young Austin is the knucklehead. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So part of the reason they don't step out or whatever, they're going, I don't want the ramifications of what if I make a mistake? So I hear kids talk about FOMO, fear of missing out, but I also hear them now talking about FOMU, FOMU, fear of messing up. So part of the reason they don't step up or stand out, not the only reason, and I'm not excusing it, I'm explaining it, is they know, man, if I make a mistake, I'm the laughing stock of, Alpharetta or whatever. So that would be, just know, dads and moms and coaches, have a little empathy. It's a different day today. So now what can we do? One of our images, it's one of my favorite images. It's called thermostat or thermometer. Now, we all know those two instruments have to do with the temperature, right? But here's the big difference. A thermometer can only tell you what the temperature is. A thermostat actually sets the temperature. Most student athletes will go onto a team as a first-year player, let's call them a rookie, and they're just wanting to blend in. I just want to do what everybody's doing. Look around, freshmen, what are the sophomores and juniors and seniors doing? We want to encourage them to do two things that will make them a thermostat: live by values and add value. Now think about this. Everybody I know, business, sports, you name it, that lives by a set of standards, of values that are maybe a cut above the coach even asked them to do, they're admired. Even if you don't agree with them, right? You still admire that person for living by a standard. Michael Jordan shot free throws 30 extra minutes after the team went into the showers. I admire that. So live by values. Teach your kids, live by values. Come up with a set of, with both of my kids, I helped them, but they did it. Came up with 6 words that were their personal core values. That no matter what everybody else was doing, I'm going to live by this. But then adding value. Think about the people you know that are thermostats, that influence others, that set the temperature. They're adding value to other people. I remember some of the players at the University of Alabama football team being over there with them. I'll never forget, one player was a senior. He was washing the cleats of the freshman players. And his teammates would make fun of, what are you doing that for? They should be washing your cleat. No. He goes, one of my values is service, and I'm going to do this. This is who I am. It's not who they are. It's who I am. But think about it. If there's a student athlete that lives by a set of values and they're adding value, I'm telling you, I don't care if they got a badge or not, people are going to admire them. So I feel like that's what we need to do to help them step up and be that influencer rather than the influenced on the team.
Wow.
That's good. That's challenging and great stuff. Well, one of the things you talked about, the fear of messing up, which kind of dovetails into a whole idea too of parents being afraid to let their kids fail. Yeah. And I've heard you talk about this. Can you speak about the danger of being that parent who makes sure that they clear the path for the kids so they never fail?
I think the definition of a successful parent has morphed in my lifetime. When I was being raised back in the 20th century, that is, when I was being raised, a good parent gave their child whatever they needed. Today, sometimes I think a good parent feels like I got to give them whatever they want, which you and I both know that is not a good model. That is not a good model because an 11-year-old doesn't know that what he wants is not good for it. So I feel like today we have felt like that we've got to overprotect. We've got to prepare, or protect and preface everything, paving the way, preparing the path for the child instead of the child for the path. I've said that a million times, but I feel like that's what we've unwittingly done. So here's my conclusion, and then maybe a thought or two. We've risked too little, we rescued too quickly, and we raved too easily. So we risked too little. We thought we were scared for their safety. What if they fall down and skin their knee? Oh God, OMG. Well, you and I both know that's probably good for them. I needed to skin my knee a few times to know here's what I got to do different now. Yeah. We rescue too quickly. We fear for their status. So a mama might, I'm not making fun of moms here, but mama might run into the teacher when the child has made a poor grade and say, hey, would you lighten up a little bit? Can you give them another chance? We're rescuing them. Or we bring their gym shorts down when they forgot them or their backpack. Well, the kid's going to rely on mom now, not themselves. So I'm just saying we're sending wrong messages and then rave too easily. We feared for their self-esteem. So now we're telling them they're awesome for putting their fork in the dishwasher, when really what we ought to say is, thank you. We all put our fork in the dishwasher in our family. Appreciate you doing that, Josh. But then they're not set up for anybody else, coach included, to say they're awesome for showing up at practice on time. I'm sorry I'm ranting right now, but
no, I keep going, man. Yeah. I love all this. I'm showing my parents of my team real quick.
I just feel like we were so scared for our kids that we did some things that actually prevent them from growing up well, from maturing well, and being a son that's ready to be a man, or a young lady that's ready to be a woman and ready for her career, because we overfunction. That's the best politically correct word. We've overfunctioned as parents. So I feel like if we can just take care of that, risk too little, rescue too quickly, rape too easily, we're gonna do a lot better. Now, I actually forgot the question at this point. Do you remember?
No, I want to add. Well, I want to add to this because I have 4 kids, 11, 9, 6, and 4. And my question is, though, to the parents, whether it's life or school or sports, how do you find a balance between some empathy and grace, and also developing the grit and mental toughness you talked about, right? Like, I guess you just pick and choose when. Yeah, because I think that's the hardest thing is trying to figure out, like, man, am I being too tough on my kid? And we talk a lot about on here, but also we know that sometimes they need a kick in the rear.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Well put, Jeff. So one of our images really informs me on that question. We call it the velvet covered brick. I think all great leaders, including moms and dads, are velvet on the outside. So there's grace, there's belief, there's empathy, there's, you got my attention, I love you, and I believe in you. Inside, brick. That's more, because I believe in you, I'm not going to dilute the standard now because it's hard on Tuesday. So it's high belief, high expectation together. Now, I actually believe great coaches and great parents, it's a tender balance between intentionality and laissez-faire. Now, let me break that down. We need to be intentional, right? We in other words, we need to have a game plan. We're going to get them ready for whatever happens. We don't even know what's going to happen, but we want them to be ready for whatever path comes their way. But the laissez-faire, Jeff, is some things are going to happen to you, son, that none of us have control over. I want you to be so ready that whenever something happens, whatever it is, you got a compass inside. You know how to react to that or respond to that. So I would say that laissez-faire is where we got to say, all right, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do in this situation? So I'll give you a scenario. My kids, when they were growing up, I tried to practice a little acronym to give me wisdom on how to lead them in that moment. You know how forever, never, never, guys, we've said this is the leg you got to stand on, meaning this is something you can go to the bank on. ALEG. It's an acronym that has really been a godsend. So when I approach my child or my student athlete and I'm not quite sure what to do, I should start with letter A, ask. Don't tell, don't chew them out right away. Ask, what made you make that decision? Or what was it behind that choice? Or why did you do that? Not what in the world were you thinking, but more, what were you thinking? When I ask questions, they feel valued. I mean, think about it. You're the dad and you're saying, son, tell me what your thoughts were. That's a little different than what I would have done, but maybe you've got, so they feel valued. They respond back. The letter L is listen. It does very little good to ask questions if we're not willing to listen, or if we ask only to wait for our turn to, say something back. So when I listen, they feel heard. And by the way, the data shows the number one cry of Generation Z's heart is to have a voice and be heard. And we want to say, well, you got to earn my respect, buddy. We need to hear them out. So Jeff, even your young children, just for dad to go, I want to hear you. I want to hear you. You're now putting change in your pocket when you're hearing them, even if it is a knucklehead thing that they're saying right now.
Which probably will be, but.
That's right. And by the way, mine were too. Some of them were wingnut, foul tip, bonehead things. The letter E is empathize. And this is what I've had to learn more as a male, as a man. When I empathize, I find ways, my own language, to let them know I understand. So I might say something like, God, I had no idea that you were feeling that way. Or I didn't have any, oh man, I bet that made you feel awful. You got to figure out your own language. But when we empathize, they feel understood. So now the letter G and a leg. So I've asked, I've listened, I've empathized. They feel valued, they feel heard, they feel understood. Now I've earned my right to practice letter G, which is guide. And that's what I wanted to do in the first place, is guide them. But now I've really earned it. It's no badge, even though I could say I'm the dad, that's why. And I'm telling you, when I did this with my kids, oh my gosh, especially my daughter, she has been out there all of her life. If you say the sky is blue, she'll go, no, it isn't. It's aqua. That's my daughter. So if I listened and listened and listened, I finally won her at the heart level. And I won the right. So I guess I would say, Jeff, when you're figuring out, what do I do? Do I step in?
love
Do I not
that.
step in? I think that's going to give you the wisdom you need to know what to do, I think.
So Tim, listening to all that, I mean, it kind of takes me back to this is what we love about youth sports, and it's part of why we're doing this thing, is because kids are going to fail in sports, and if they want to reach their potential in sports, they got to learn to deal with failure and adversity and bounce back. But if they learn it on the sports field, and if the parents help them respond on the sports field, then it translates to life as well. And
it's so true.
we see so many times parents in youth sports, or their kids are failing, or the coach is upset with them, and they're jumping in and going and seeing the coach, or they're transferring them to another team when they need to let their kids go through a little bit of adversity.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So let me volley back on that. I wholeheartedly agree. And I feel like it's part of that narrative I just gave you that we just got wrong. We were well-intentioned, but we risked too little, rescued too quickly. It's actually, in my own opinion, it's actually part of this growing cancel culture that's just permeated down to the personal level. We think the right answer when I meet an adversary or some opposing force, remove it. And you and I both know that is not the answer for most, not all, but most hardship is to remove the hardship. So this is actually a very interesting behavioral science thing that I want to try to share with you in really simple terms, because it might really help coaches and parents. There are two terms in the world of psychology: learned helplessness and learned industriousness. You might remember that from Psych 101 class or whatever. So learned helplessness was proven way back decades ago. If a child tries something and tries something and tries something, and they keep failing and failing and failing, eventually their brain's going to go, it doesn't do any good. You suck, or you stink at that or whatever. And we eventually give up. Even adults do this. If I fail over and over and over and over and over without any guidance, I'm eventually going to go, I can't do that. Learned industriousness happens when we try, and maybe nothing happens right up front, but there's a guide on the side, I like to call it. There's a guide on the side saying, oh, I think I saw improvement. Seriously? Yeah, I think I did. And learned industriousness is you try, even if you see an increment of improvement, you learn, okay, keep going. So let me give you a quick example. When my son Jonathan was like 8 or 9 years old, he was in the kitchen one morning and he had a jar of peanut butter and he could not get the lid off. And I said, Jonathan, keep trying, buddy. Keep trying. You'll get it. He goes, Dad, I already tried it 6 times. And I said, go get your mom. I want her to see you do this. They go, what? Yes, you're going to do it. Just go get her. Well, he ran and got her. Here's what I did. I loosened the peanut butter jar cap just enough, and then I tightened it back up. But I tightened it back up enough to know with some effort, he could get it. Well, he came back in. He said, Dad, it's not going to do any good. And I said, just give it one more shot, buddy. Well, he opened it. And from that point on, he had in his mind, I can open this jar. It takes a lot of elbow grease, but I can open this jar. So what I think we need to do as leaders is when they try and they don't see any progress, we need to show them where there was progress. Jeff, I don't know if you have any illustration from batting practice or whatever, but early in your career, you must have had somebody that said, Jeff, I think maybe you're getting better at that. I don't know. But we've got to give them a different narrative that says, I know it's hard, but you just showed me improvement. I'll give you a great example. This just came to my mind. I told you I work for John Maxwell. John and I were talking about this. And John said, Tim, when I was growing up, my older brother Larry and I would wrestle in the living room after dinner almost every night. And my dad would come and watch us every night. And he said, one night my dad was watching and he noticed Larry was pinning me every single time because Larry was like 2 or 3 years older and bigger, So John kept going. I kept getting pinned. And he said, my dad noticed I was trying less because I kept getting pinned. And I thought, what's the use? It was learned helplessness. So John's dad, Melvin, said, Larry, let me wrestle John. I wonder if I can take him. And of course, you know what happened. Melvin stepped in and he fought hard, but he allowed John to finally get him down. John said to me, I remember feeling so good about myself that he said, Larry never pinned me again. I didn't beat him, but he never pinned me again. And again, maybe this is over analyzing, but I feel like we've got to help our kids see, I know it's hard, but you did something that moved the ball forward.
Yeah.
And that's learned industriousness. That's how you build grit, I believe, is showing some improvement, giving them the encouragement. I heard a little girl, it's a story of a little girl that said, Dad, let's go play ball. I'll hit the ball and you say, good job. That's our job.
Yeah.
Tim, Tim, I mean, these guys every week, these guys are encouraging me. You know, I struggle with this podcast stuff, but you know, Britt's pretty hard on me, but Jeff has been really good about just say, hey, you know what? You got a little bit better today. You got a little bit better today, you know, and I'm trying. These guys are pros, you know, and you look for that grace, and these guys have done a good job of really, you know, helping me to kind of get to that next level, you know. I really appreciate that, guys.
Sometimes guys are past fixing, so we're trying to work on the younger generation. But, you know, in all seriousness, so you said something, you were asking for like an illustration, and I've told these guys from doing this last 2.5 years, the way I've coached my oldest son and daughter has totally changed, like during the games where I'm very encouraging. Now, I practice hard, but during the games, and it's amazing how much I feel like my kids have freed up. And they go out there, they play a lot more relaxed, a lot more, you know, just open, and it's shining. They're playing well instead of me getting on to them for every little thing, and they're responding. And so you go back a little bit ago, you talked about FOMO, and you mentioned it again, but I want to come back to it, the fear of messing up.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I feel like this is one of the biggest issues in youth sports is kids think their parents are going to come unraveled if they mess up.
And some do.
And some do. No, more than should do. Coaches are going to come unglued if I don't get this right. So how, as parents and coaches, do we try to take a step back and just say, let's let this play out? Because one of our first podcasts, it might have been Inky Johnson, who we showed last week, I think said, you know, 2 of the best coaches I ever learned from were bad coaches. I learned what I didn't want to do. And he said, thank God my mom let me go through that to learn that. So how do we do that as parents? How do we just get out of the way?
Yeah. I think we need to change our report card, Jeff. I think moms and dads, maybe especially dads, I'll just say it, can come unglued because we're thinking my son's going to play third base for the Boston Red Sox. And of course, I want to go, he's going to be a software programmer, Bob. So we're often living out our unlived life through our child. Come on. And so I would just say, change our report card to, you know what, the best thing that can be learned right now is handle failure, handle loss, and build the skills that you're going to transfer to a career, whatever the career is. So the report card needs not to be, you know, you're the star or we won every game. It's we're learning. So I want to share some research that might really be interesting. When student athletes in college, these are NCAA Division I athletes, so they've arrived at some level here, were asked, do your parents overcoach you? They go, oh God, yes. I got my trainer, I got my head coach, I got my assistant coach, and I got my dad. You know, so I've got 4 voices coming at me, sometimes not all agreeing on what I should do. I asked them, what do you want your mom and dad to say? I'm going to get choked up, but I want to tell you what they said. They said, I just wish that my mom or dad would say, I love watching you play. Not an extra coach. Maybe that'll come later. Maybe that's a week later, you know, after the dust is settled and the emotions are down, you can offer a little, you know, tip here or there. But in the moment, they're already feeling, I struck out 3 times today. Boy, am I going to hear from dad. My son just preached yesterday at a church in LA. And I streamed, I watched it. First thing I texted, I love hearing you speak. I didn't say, you needed another illustration on point number 3. He didn't need dad to say that. What he needed is, I just love watching you play. So this research was broken down. I know I'm rambling here, but this is
awesome.
Keep it coming.
Kids were then asked, this was not me, but by some surveys, thousands of student athletes, what do you want your mom and dad to say before the game? What do you want them to say after the game? So a lot came in, you can imagine. But the top 3 answers before and after were this. Before the game, have fun, play hard, I love you. After the game, did you have fun? Were you fair? I love you. Again, no armchair quarterback coming in. Now, there may be a time where dad is invited by his 12-year-old son. Tell me what I did, Dad. Okay, now I got an invitation. But right now I'm your dad. You got 14 other coaches, and God knows you got YouTube videos to watch. I just want to love on you. So I don't know if that rings true for you all, but it just changed the way I lead my kids and kids in general.
That's powerful. That's very powerful stuff. You touched on something in all that I want to ask you about, because I've seen you talk about it, and that's parents. And I'm going to use a harsh word because I've heard you use it. Parents lying to their kids about their potential, and it happens in sports. It happens in life, and and just expecting their kids to achieve something that, come on. We talk about it a lot. Parents not being self-aware of what their kids' talents really are. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So I did a book that what I felt pushed to do called 12 Huge Mistakes Parents Can Avoid. And the whole purpose wasn't I'm the grand guru and let me tell you how to do it. I just kept seeing patterns. And one of them was this lying thing. In good intentions or with good intentions, we want to tell our son or daughter, you're amazing. And you and I both know they're not amazing, No,
they're not.
That's right.
100%.
So I'm so sorry. I'm going to interrupt myself now. I was up, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, maybe more, with the New York Giants, talking to the coaching staff. And this was so funny. Oh gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Who was head coach forever, never, New York Giants?
Parcells?
Tom Coughlin.
No, Tom Coughlin. Yeah.
Dude, Tom Coughlin time. If you're 5 minutes early, you're late, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Love him.
Tom Coughlin was born during the book of Leviticus, I think. Let me just say. But Tom raises his hand while I'm talking about this very thing. And Tom goes, Tim, I got a question for you. He goes, I'm with my son and his 2 boys in the minivan going to a ball game. When we get back in the van after the game, my son's going, oh, boys, you were amazing. You're amazing. He goes, Tim, they were not amazing. And I wanted to tell them the truth. You can just hear Tom Coughlin saying this, He was wanting to shake their cage,
Oh.
And I said, Tom, you're the grandpa, buddy. Don't you do that. You want relationship when they're 22, not therapy. But anyway, so getting back to the point at hand here, I feel as though we don't mean to lie, but when we start saying what we wish for rather than what is, and we can be accurate and honest, we start losing them. By middle school, they go, Mom, you're the only one saying I'm awesome. None of my friends say I'm awesome. And they stop believing you. They literally stop believing you. I know young adults who are in a love-hate relationship with their mom and dad. And the reason they love their mom and dad because they're BFFs, but they were a pal when they should have been a parent. And they should have said, in fact, sometimes they should have said, honey, you did a good job on that. Not a great job, not an awesome job, but a good job. And then as conversation unfolds, you're invited to say more, but that keeps us believable. So I don't know if I'm going the direction you wanted to go on that, but I just feel like we need to be very careful that our comments are affirming but accurate.
Yeah, self-awareness.
I think that's a cheat code for life is awareness. You see that so many adults that struggle because there's a lack of awareness. And as parents, I mean, gosh, we don't want to, there's a struggle enough without the parents messing up in it. But if parents add to that problem, it's even worse. I mean, gosh,
I told the story. These guys know it. I coach an 11U, 12U now, but travel softball team. And last year we played 10, 11 tournaments and my daughter played great. But the best moment for me was she had 2 really good tournaments to start the year. And her third tournament, she was brutal, right? I mean, she was not good. And we got in the car and she literally goes, boy, Dad, did I suck today? And I'm like, thank God you realize that, right? Like, but honestly, like we need our kids to have awareness when it comes to that and kind of where you stand, because I think that way you find out too, how much do you love the sport? Do you want to work at it? You know, we talk about that a lot. You know, these parents push these kids to play a sport that they have no passion for.
Yes.
And when you don't have passion for it, you're not going to work for it.
That's right. Absolutely. In fact, let me volley back real quick. My son was more of a thespian. He loved the stage rather than the ball field more. So I went to a lot of shows and a lot of plays. But he was actually a coach in a theater program for a little while. And I'll never forget, he came back one night and he goes, Dad, you won't believe what happened today. I said, what? He goes, well, this was a special theater program that was training kids in singing, dancing, and acting. As the kids entered the door, a medal was hung around their neck. Just show up. Here's a medal hung around your neck. And then as they competed, here were the 3 levels of medals they got. Gold, high gold, platinum. Gold was as low as you go. The worst on the stage got a gold medal. And then, I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. Jonathan told me, my son told me, he said, Dad, when it was all over, the guy in charge stepped up and said, Moms and dads, thank you for coming today. If your child did not get the award you wanted them to get, they're on sale out on the lobby.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not kidding. Now, that's well-intentioned. That is stupidity. It's a mild form of child abuse. I'm serious. It is. So if I love my kid, I say, glad you participated. Maybe that's the best I can do. Glad you participated. And then you debrief afterwards. And like you said, Jeff, you go, maybe you don't have a passion for this. And that's okay. But let's find something you do. So,
Tim, I mean, I was raised by a baby boomer, and it feel like the baby boomers were just, they were so into their jobs. They were so into just kind of providing for their families, and they weren't like really as engaged as the Gen Xers and obviously, those of us. So what happened? Like what happened? I mean, people talk about, well, kids haven't changed, but parents have changed.
Yeah.
What is it about? Is it Gen X, I guess, that we're so messed up as parents? We felt like we had to be super, super involved because our parents weren't as involved.
I do think a pendulum swings back and forth with each new generation of parents. So you're absolutely right. The reputation that boomers have was we were workaholics. My dad was a bit of a workaholic. I am a boomer. I've been tempted. I love my job, but I was very aware. If you ask a Gen Zer about work, they might say, the boomers live to work. I work to live. So it's a reaction. So I think, getting back to your question, I think Gen X reacted to the older generations that were so into work that they wanted to be hyper involved. But the balance maybe hasn't come from many. And that's what I think you and I are hoping to build here, a sense of laissez-faire and intentionality. Be there, love on them. If they ask for any extra coaching, sure, offer it. But I think we need to stop this swinging from one extreme to another. It's just not, the kids end up being the victims of bad leadership in our house. Yeah.
Tim, I want to ask a really, really specific question on parenting. If your kid doesn't have grit, if you just don't see it, what do you do as a parent? How do you do things to help them develop grit?
Yeah, it's a great question. The shortest answer I can give on this that we have time for, I did a blog article one time on this stuff that builds grit and helps your kids grow up. So it's grit and growth. I came up with 5. I'm going to do this from memory now. Do something scary. Now that may sound like it has nothing to do with grit, but I think there's something in the human soul, especially boys, but I think boys and girls, that when you do something that's a little bit scary, that there's no guarantee it's all going to work out because mama's right there, we come alive. We just come alive. I remember doing some scary things that built a little bit of a manhood in me, even at 13 years old. So do something scary, meet someone significant or famous Now, let me tell you why I said that. Everybody's significant, but when I expose my kids to someone that was famous, a celebrity, or even meeting John Maxwell, for instance, they got comfortable looking them in the eye, even though they could have been intimidated, and have a conversation. I remember taking my daughter Bethany up to Washington, D.C. for the National Day of Prayer in May one year when she was younger. She met congressmen and senators and this, that. And by the end of the day, she's shaking hands and meeting, and I'm thinking, this is good. This is good. She got a sense of agency. She has a sense of identity.
There was Congress people at the National Day of Prayer?
A couple.
This was way back in the 20th century.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So I don't know what's happening today. Yes.
Sorry, continue.
Thank you for the comment from the peanut gallery.
That's a different show.
Yeah, exactly. So number 3, travel someplace different. As you have traveled, when you go, let's say you go on a cross-cultural trip, maybe to another country. Don't you learn your antennas are up. I don't know this language. I don't know these customs here. You're just on the alert to be your best self because it's not familiar. It's not comfortable. This builds a little grit. Another one is try something new. Like I wanted both of my kids to start something, whether it was be an entrepreneur for a little lemonade stand or something like that. That builds a little grit. And then the final one, number 5, wait and work for something you want. So I'm going to tell a story on this one. Some of you all might know David Salyers, who was with Chick-fil-A for years and years and years.
Yep.
David and I did a mentoring group for our sons when they were about 12 years old. David told me this story of Nick, his 12-year-old son. This was way back in the day because Nick's in his 30s now. But Nick and David walked into an Apple store. And do you remember the iPod when that was the rage?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Nick saw a brand new iPod. And he goes, Dad, I got to get this. It's brand new. And there's only one left. I got to get it. Well, David was in a quandary because he knew he could buy it for Nick. He had the money. But he thought, I don't know if that's going to be good for him. Speaking of building grit. So David said, Nick, how much money you got? Dad, I got zero. Got nothing. I got nothing right now. So David said, Nick, I'll make you a deal. I will buy this iPod, but it's mine because I'm buying it. And I'm going to put it up and away where you can't reach it and you don't even know where it is. But I'm going to let you make monthly payments to me until you pay it off. So what I love about this is he secured it for his son. That was an act of love, but he didn't just give it to him. He told me later, I never saw Nick work so hard for some months and months and months. And he said, when I finally gave it to him, he had earned it and paid for it. He said, Nick was just a new man. So those would be the 5 things that I think build grit in the everyday kid that's going to help. It's just going to pay off in the future when they're out meeting people new and doing something brand new and needing a little grit in their life.
Man, that's so good. Mm-hmm. That's so good. Finishing up here, my final question for you, Tim. Youth sports is such a big part of today's culture. I mean, that's why we do what we do and talk about it. What are a couple of the benefits you see? I know as you spend a lot of time with all these athletes and coaches, and then what are some of the dangers, I think for parents to be aware of?
Wow. Well, we've already touched on it earlier, but when we misconstrue the priority of youth sports, Jeff, you played Major League Baseball. My goodness gracious, you were at the top of your game, and at the highest of the games.
Yeah,
I think most kids aren't going to do that. The minor league statistics and then major, it's just such a small percent. I think we need to make sure that we make sure they learn the highest priority is your development, your growth. And maybe delayed gratification might be the greatest virtue you learn. Jeff, let's just take baseball. You've taught this better than I. It's a game of mistakes and failure,
Yeah.
So, but boy, if your son's learning or your daughter's learning and they're learning how to delay gratification, the base hit I wanted to hit or whatever, I feel like those are what can right the wrongs. But we got to change our report card to it's not just about winning and being the best and posting on Instagram. That's all secondary. And maybe we don't even need to post. Imagine that. Maybe we just live our lives instead of post our lives.
That's I love that.
Yeah, we love that.
I love that. Live your life, not post your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
just came to my mind how you talked about do something scary or get your heart. We were just at Thanksgiving at my wife's parents' farm, and we chopped down a massive tree.
Wow.
That's awesome.
But it was awesome. But what you said was like, we really weren't sure of 3 directions that it could go. And there was one that was on kind of like an angle on the side of the porch.
Yeah.
And there was something so exhilarating for an hour and a half.
Wait to see what happened.
Figuring out where it was coming down. And, we were pulling, yanking on it different ways. And finally, when it did, we went and celebrated with margaritas, man. That's how excited we were.
With your kids?
Well, no, the kids didn't come. There were 4 grown men out there chopping the tree down.
Yeah.
But it was so true. It was like, it was really, man, you got your heart rate going and you came alive. It was cool.
Yeah.
Tim, we've touched on some of your books and so on and so forth. Tell people how they can find you and how they can access some of those materials.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for asking. It's been great to be with you guys, by the way. Well, Growing Leaders is the organization that I founded 21 years ago, growingleaders.com. And there are Habitude books and 12 Huge Mistakes. Or you can find me at timelmore.com. That's just my personal, that's where you can follow me if you want to, where I really talk a lot about this on different platforms. We just got to lead better if we're going to have good adults at the end of the journey. So, yeah.
Well, you have helped us today in a big way.
Thank you, Tim. We appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much.
And spending some time with us this morning. Hope you have a great Christmas, man. And thank you again.
Yeah, it's great to be with you guys. Thanks for doing what you do.